morning. Welcome to our morning news reading session. We will begin shortly. Hello, good morning. Welcome to our morning news reading session. We will begin shortly once we've adjusted the screen. Hello, hello. Hope everyone can see the screen. I'm just trying to zoom in a little more. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Hope you all are having a pleasant Sunday morning and hope everyone's enjoying themselves. Thank you for joining in. Sorry if the screen's a little off, it's just a little on the wobbly side. Yes, I am not the same teacher because it's a Sunday. So I'm just here to fill in for the reading session today. So the regular teachers are obviously not working on Sundays because they have to rest. So I am here to provide some morning news reading, and I am not actually a teacher. I am simply someone who reads. So let us start with our morning news reading article from the Straits Times. So right off the bat, we just warm up with this one of the headlines on the Straits Times. Stateless unemployed youth who has never gone to school lands job offer. So how did this happen? Let's find out. Singapore. Stateless youth Rico Raffles once likened his experience to that of a ghost. His presence known to and noticed by only a few people. Without formal education, jobless and strapped for cash, the 25-year-old felt inferior. He rarely left the Clementi estate where he lives and grew up, and has never stepped out of Singapore. That changed after the Straits Times reported in September on the challenges he and two other stateless individuals faced living here without citizenship or permanent residency. From rules that prevented them from opening bank accounts to uncertainty over healthcare provisions. So that seems like a really tough position to be in. As a stateless individual, you practically don't exist in the system. So let's find out how they managed to get through this hurdle. After struggling for months to secure employment because of his residency status, Mr. Rafizuan said he will start work in November as an operation executive for a co-living operator, the Assembly Place, which rents out accommodation with communal facilities. Sounds like a fitting role for someone who is in their position. The report sparked an outpouring of support from offers of help with the English language and training to jobs and meals at restaurants. The young man, who had been reluctant to draw attention to himself and was content to exist in a quiet corner, said he has been overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers. The people who offered encouragement, who said they believe in me, it feels like they see me. It makes me feel like I should believe in myself, he said. Although he peppered his answers to Straits Times in an earlier interview with jibes about his Lack of formal education, he had no self-deprecating comebacks this time. Mr. Rafi Zuan was born in Singapore in October 1999 to an unwed, stateless mother who placed him in the care of a childless Singaporean couple with whom she was friends. Her biological mother, who was incarcerated for a period of time, eventually became a permanent resident. His biological mother, who was incarcerated for a period of time, eventually became a permanent resident, PR for short, but she never applied for him to become a Singaporean or PR. The absence of documents such as a birth certificate meant the couple who raised him as their own son could not register him in a school. With his stateless status and no formal education, Mr. Rafi Zuan struggled to land a job. This was until the founder and chief executive of the assembly place, Mr. Eugene Lim, saw the report and contacted Straits Times and the Foundation of Rotary Clubs, Singapore Family Service Centre, FRCS FSC for short in Clementi. The FRCS FSC has been helping Mr. Rafizuan with his employment difficulties and citizenship woes. Mr. Lim, a Singaporean, said he was surprised to learn about the challenges that stateless people face. I've benefited from the Singapore system and I want to give back. I asked myself, how can we integrate someone like Rico into our society? It's not just about giving him a job. Anyone can do that. It's more important for us to help him upskill and build his confidence, he said. Mr. Lim said he was impressed by the fact that even though Mr. Rafizuan did not have formal education, he had spent most of his time hanging out in void decks and parks. He did not fall into bad company. That he did not turn to a life of crime is already half the battle won. I want to help him continue that, to assure him that we will support him if he stays on the straight and narrow, he said. Mr. Lim had initially offered Mr. Rafi Zuan a repair technician job when they met earlier in October, but the young man was worried that his skills were lacking and asked to contribute in other ways. They agreed to start with housekeeping duties, but with training to take on more technical roles. Mr. Lim also intends to enroll Mr. Rafizuan for English lessons. Mr. Lim then approached the Ministry of Manpower for permission to hire Mr. Rafizuan. He received the go-ahead soon after and the employment contract was drawn up. Mr. Rafizuan is both excited and nervous about his new role, which will involve cleaning and maintaining properties leased out by the firm. I don't have the confidence, but I thought, why not try something new? Maybe it will turn out well, he said, adding that he had a week-long stint as a warehouse worker in August. He had also applied to work as a cleaner at 3 different companies, but was unsuccessful. The first company was unsure about hiring a stateless person. The second told him it did not have the quota to hire stateless people, and the third did not respond. His parents. As at December 21st, 2023, there are 853 stateless people living in Singapore. They are not recognized as a citizen of any country and have no nationality. It's really rough to be stateless, I think, especially here where you have to exist in the system to gain a lot of benefits, a lot of protections, and all that. So I cannot imagine what it must be like to be stateless. Just think about not having any access to CDC vouchers, not having access to a bank account. So if you think about it, um, it's rough. It's really rough. So there are 853 stateless people living in Singapore, not recognized as a citizen of any country, have no nationality, something we all take for granted. So that's just some food for thought. Let's continue reading. Mr. Rafizuan is among the 24% of stateless people here who are also not PRs. They are thus not entitled to subsidized education, healthcare, and housing. Ms. Hamida Osman, 54, and Mr. Jamaluddin Jantan, 66, have raised him as their son since he was a 5-month-old baby in their 2-room flat in Clementi. Mr. Rafi Diwan regards them as his parents and calls them Mama and Papa. Mr. Jamaluddin works as a cleaner, while Miss Hamida is a housewife. They did not know that their son was stateless and could not enroll him in school as they did not have his identity documents at the time. Miss Hamida said that when Mr. Rafizuan was a toddler, his maternal relatives wanted to put him in an orphanage. But Miss Hamida's mother convinced her to keep the child. Rico was a good boy. He gave us no problems. We love him like he's our own child, she said. While Mr. Rafizuan's birth mother was incarcerated, his caregivers tried to get his birth certificate. Sorry, so basically incarcerated. The word here means put in prison or jail. While Mr. Rafizuan's birth mother was incarcerated, his caregivers tried to get his birth certificate from his relatives so he could get his childhood immunizations and be enrolled in school. They were not successful. Miss Hamida said, "We tried many times to get his birth certificate. We went to the Immigration and Checkpoints Authority, ICA, and a few mosques to ask for help. We were told to check with Rico's relatives, but they were not helpful. We did not know what else to do at the time." The young man occasionally speaks to his birth mother, who lives in Singapore, but he declined to say more. He said he found out he was stateless in 2019 after he and his friends were approached by the police on one occasion, and the officers raised suspicions over why he did not have an identity card. He remains in Singapore on a special pass issued by ICA that has to be renewed every year. So just imagine that most of us take our pink IC or our nationality for granted, while this individual here practically has to renew his pass every year, and he doesn't have a birth certificate. So that's something that most of us will never have to think about or be concerned about, but there are apparently several individuals here in Singapore who are in pretty tight situations, I guess we could say. Something to think about. Social worker Muhammad Khalifa Nazir Muhammad Ali from FRCS FSC in Clementi started looking after Mr. Rafizuan's case when he approached the Center for Help. Mr. Khalifa helped him navigate the procedure involved in applying to the authorities for permission to work in Singapore and with preparing his PR application submitted earlier in October. Mr. Rafizuan was given authorization to work here in July. Then came the news report in September, which prompted more than 80 people to contact Straits Times and the FRCS FSC over Mr. Rafizuan's case. The young man said he was touched and grateful for the help, adding, "I've never received so much attention and support in my life. I feel there is hope. I am willing to try new things and work hard." Mr. Rafizuan will report for his first day of work at the Assembly Place on November 4. His salary will be deposited into a family friend's bank account, as he cannot open his own because of his stateless status. Meanwhile, FRCS FSC is coordinating with the Muslim Converts Association of Singapore, Darul Arqam Singapore. The association gave Mr. Rafizuan a one-off sum of $200 to get what he needs for work and has offered him one-on-one religious classes. Six questions in Parliament. 6 questions on stateless people living in Singapore was submitted in Parliament in October after Straits Times story was published. Nominated MP Raswana Begum Abdul Rahim asked for an update on the number of stateless children here and the support available to them. Minister for Home Affairs and Law K. Shanmugam said in a written parliamentary reply on October 15 that there were 7 stateless children under the age of 12 in Singapore and another 13 between the ages of 12 and 18 as of December 31st, 2023. They constituted 2.3% of the total number of stateless individuals here. Mr. Shanmugam said that while their circumstances vary, one reason for their statelessness is that they were born in Singapore to foreign parents who did not obtain the citizenship of their country for their children. The minister noted that Singapore, like many countries, does not automatically grant citizenship to children born here. On how citizenship applications are evaluated, he said the criteria include the conduct and contributions of the applicants, their links to Singapore, such as if they have family members who are Singaporeans, and how long they have been in the country. The circumstances under which the person became stateless would also be taken into consideration, Mr. Shanmugam said. He added that it is the responsibility of the parents or legal guardians to take care of the child's well-being, including obtaining citizenship for the child. Sorry, I think I've knocked the iPad a little out of place. Now it's a little off center. Just give me a moment. Okay, I think it's centralized. All right, let's continue. However, if a child or young person has no parent or caregiver willing or able to provide care or guardianship in Singapore, they may be provided with statutory protection under the Children and Young Persons Act, he said. Mr. Shanmugam said that from 2019 to 2023, an average of 17 applications for permanent residency and 60 applications for citizenship from stateless individuals were processed each year. Of these, about 35% of PR applications and 60% of citizenship applications were approved. Mr. Rafi Zuan is keeping his fingers crossed about his PR application, which ICA informed him would take about 6 months to process. But he has a job to look forward to. His parents said they are proud of him, adding that they were moved when he revealed in the early report that he wanted a job so he could look after them in their old age. Miss Hamida said, "Even though we are close, I don't know the extent to which Rico was struggling, as he never told me. I was touched to read that he wanted to work to help the family. She hopes she hopes he will become a Singapore citizen one day, get married, and start his own family. But first, Mr. Rafi Zuan has to learn to navigate beyond Clementi. I don't really leave Clementi, and when I do, I'm usually with my friends who lead the way," he said sheepishly. Days after Mr. Rafi Zuan secured the job, his social worker, Ms. Khalifa, spent about 40 minutes over a few sit-down sessions explaining to Mr. Rafi Zuan how he can travel to his workplace from the Bukit Merah rental flat his family will soon be moving into. Mr. Rafi Zuan will work in 2 locations, in Middle Road in the Rochor district and in Geylang. I am so thankful for all the people who encouraged me. I will keep trying. I won't give up, he said. He added that he does not blame anyone for his predicament, not even his biological mother. With regard to his parents, he said it was not their fault that he ended up without formal education. They just did not know whom to turn to for help. Mr. Rafi Zuan said he is glad that he can finally step out of the shadows, leave Clementi for work, and maybe one day travel out of Singapore with his friends. So that is quite an interesting story that you probably won't hear every day. Well, stateless people in Singapore. For those of you who are keen to look at the video in this article, you can go to Straits Times. It's this morning. Stateless unemployed youth who has never gone to school lands job offer. So for those curious, can read this up on Straits Times this morning. We will take a short break, and later we'll be back with more news reading while I continue to look for interesting stories and articles to read out. We'll be back in a short bit. Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our morning news reading session. what we are going to do is just read a few news articles together. Hopefully, you can see the screen. So, just an interesting article. I believe most of you, or hopefully some of you, do know who Elon Musk is. Uh, Currently runs SpaceX, and a few other interesting companies. You may have heard of Tesla, and you might have heard of the so-called Boring Company. So let's find out more about this interesting person, to say the least, and probably find out how he got so ridiculously rich. So Elon Musk briefly worked illegally in US in 1990s, according to the Washington Post. Let's find out more. The Washington Post reported on October 26 that South African born billionaire businessman Elon Musk worked illegally in the United States during a brief period in the 1990s while building a startup company. The news outlet reported that he arrived in Palo Alto, California in 1995 to attend Stanford University, but never enrolled in his graduate studies program there. Instead, he developed software company Zip2, which sold in 1999 for around US 300 sorry, US $300 million, according to the outlet. Two immigration law experts quoted by the Post said Musk would have needed to be enrolled in a full course of study in order to maintain a valid work authorization as a student. So that's interesting. He signed up for university but never enrolled, and instead start up his own company and started working without authorization. Musk did not respond to requests for comment sent to four of his companies: SpaceX, Tesla, the social media company X, and the Boring Company. For those of you who may be confused with the word boring here, it's not literal as in boring or dull, but boring as in the mechanical act of drilling holes, which is also the same spelling as BORE, but used in a different context. So, just for clarity, for anyone who thinks it's a literal boring company, nor did Musk's lawyer Alex Spiro. Musk in a 2020 podcast cited by the Post said, "I was legally there, but I was meant to be doing student work. I was allowed to do work, sort of, supporting whatever." The Washington Post cited two former Musk colleagues who recalled Musk receiving his US work authorization in or around 1997. Musk has endorsed Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump in the November 5th US election, so that is pretty soon. Trump has for years portrayed migrants as invaders and criminals, and during his 2017 to 2021 presidency, took stringent steps to curb legal and illegal migration. He is promising to carry out the biggest deportation effort in US history if he is re elected. Reuters. So that is quite ironic that this is happening, and apparently Elon was a sort of illegal immigrant. So, fun times, fun news. We will take a short break as we search for more interesting news to go through our morning news reading session again. Uh, Probably something that's not politics, maybe something interesting. It's a lot of unfortunate news here. Trying to look for something that's light-hearted. I think we can probably turn to the live section. Asia news. Maybe we'll look at Asia and see if there's anything interesting. Maybe we could catch up with our neighbors. So, for those of you just joining in this morning, we are doing our regular morning news reading session on this Sunday morning. So, we are now going to read from the Straits Times. Malaysia's National Service 3.0 pilot to begin in January 2025. Malaysia's National Service Training Program, PLKN 3.0, its third go at national service, has been brought forward, with the pilot to kick off in January 2025 instead of June. The program will be implemented progressively from next January with a budget of 50 million ringgit, or the equivalent of 15 million Sing dollars, said Deputy Defence Minister Adli Zahari on October 26. About 500 recruits will be drafted in January 2025, with a bigger intake to follow in June 2025, he added. The target demographics are those aged 16 to 35. Wow, that's a lot younger compared to us. So ours would be age of 18, but for them, apparently it's 16 to 35. So that is interesting. The first recruits will train at two military camps in capital Kuala Lumpur and Pahang. This will expand to 13 camps nationwide by 2026 when the PLKN is fully rolled out. Oh, so it's apparently not fully in place yet. Interesting. Said Mr. Otley, according to the original plan, we are supposed to start in the middle of next year, but there is a need for us to implement it earlier. He was speaking after oh dear, that's a little hard to pronounce. He was speaking after officiating the handover. The word comes from official, so officiating. It's just the F and the S sounds make it a little tricky to read. He was speaking after officiating the handover of a Malacca state level project. What a tongue twister. PLKN was first introduced in December 2003 as a 3-month training camp to create more patriotic and civic minded youth amid worries over racial polarization and lack of patriotism among young people. Some 85,000 randomly selected male and female participants were drafted. It ran till 2015 before starting up again in 2016 as PLKN 2.0 with around 20,000 trainees annually. That was scrapped in August 2018 as government spending tightened. Wow, okay, that's interesting. Oh, and that was a pretty short article. So uh, I guess we will have to find a longer article. That was really quick. Um, I suppose we could read more neighborly news. This seems interesting. Let's continue with our morning news reading. For those of you joining us today, we are reading news articles from the Straits Times, catching up with our neighbor. Let's begin as I clear my throat. Simple but fierce. Malaysians divided over national costume for Miss Universe pageant. She looks kind of cool, kind of looks like a Power Ranger outfit. Petaling Jaya. Malaysia's national costume for the 2024 Miss Universe pageant finals has quickly attracted both praise and criticism. While some people commended it for featuring the traditional hand-woven fabric songket, others said it is not elaborate enough. Let's take a closer look if we can zoom in. I do like the dual wielding swords. It's very, very intriguing. Like the cape as well. So let's continue. Another user highlighted how the fierce look is appropriate for Miss Lim, as she is a wushu practitioner. Approved! Maybe she can show off her martial arts moves in this design at the finals, said the netizen. Others expressed worry that the outfit may not be eye-catching enough to win the pageant's Best National Costume Award. But Mr. Bon Zainal, Mis- but Mr. Bon Zainal Harun, founder of the Malaysian Bumiputra Designer Association, said, in order for people to listen, you don't have to shout. Just a whisper is enough. Very wise words. He added that the use of traditional fabrics is always effective in helping to showcase Malaysia to the world. Fashion stylist Mukni Chedin suggested it's a refreshing interpretation of Puteri Walinong Sari. Maybe it could be elevated even further by incorporating more vibrant colors. At a press conference on October 23, Ms. Lim said she had worked very closely with designer Azuan Ismail to come up with the concept. When I first put it on, it made me feel so fierce, strong, and powerful, said Ms. Lim. Mr. Azuan is known for his designs for Malaysian celebrities such as Datuk Seri Siti Nurhaliza, Zainab Zain, and Rosita Chowan. He said the design, which was entirely handmade, was completed in just 3 weeks. He also designed an evening gown for Miss Lim, plus a secret dress that will be unveiled only during the competition in Mexico City. The national costume weighs approximately 30 kg. That is very heavy costume and measures about 1.77 meters tall. Made from locally sourced fabrics, it features salum tebuk, an elaborate embroidery technique that showcases the artistry of Malaysian heritage. There will also be an on-stage review during the pageant finals, where Miss Lim will unveil a surprise element to the design. This symbolizes her transformation from princess to warrior, showcasing the balance between beauty and strength from the Star Asia News Network. So, that last paragraph might give some insight as to why the costume weighs 30 kg. That's pretty insane. So, there you go. Very interesting costume. We will now take a short break and probably look for more interesting news articles. Probably some fun, interesting lifestyle ones on the main page. For those of you joining us, we are doing the morning news reading and looking through Asian news right now. Suppose we could do a bit of other news. This seems kind of interesting. I suppose we could look at this. All right, thank you for joining us this morning. We are doing the morning news reading session. Although I do need to get a bit of coffee before we begin. All right. So this is for subscribers only. A letter from Sydney. For Sydney folk far from Bondi, there's now the riverside Pondi. Wow, rhymes. Most of its residents live far from the coast and have limited access to the beach. But this could change under a proposal to develop river beaches. So here's an artist's impression of a proposed lake house to be built at Pondi, a new man-made beach in Penrith, a suburb in Sydney. Sydney is a city that revolves around its beaches, ranging from famous surf beaches such as Bondi and Manly that attract millions of locals and tourists each year, to little-known gentle harborside coves. I should probably look that up. Sounds interesting. Yet most of the city's 5.2 million residents live far from the coast in sprawling inland suburbs that often have limited access to the beach. Due to long and costly transport that can seem all too difficult on a hot summer's day. But this could be about to change. In 2023, Sydney opened its newest beach, a 700-meter man-made stretch of sand at a river in Penrith, a suburb in the city's west more than a suburb in the city's west, more than 60 km from Bondi. And there are hopes that the beach, nicknamed Pondi, may pave the way for a new series of beaches across Sydney's various riverways. A report titled Our Rivers, released in September by Business Western Sydney, a business advocacy group, has proposed that up to 22 river beaches could be developed, a move that would transform life for the growing population of Western Sydney. The beach in Penrith was built at a cost of Australian $1.7 million, which is the equivalent of 1.5 Singapore million dollars, on a quiet spot that was formerly a quarry on a lake alongside the Nepean River. During the summer, access was free, with 700 car spots as well as a free shuttle to ferry beachgoers from nearby train station. The train was noticeably warmer than at the city's coastal beaches. The water, sorry, was noticeably warmer than that at the city's coastal beaches, and the bird life consisted mainly of geese rather than seagulls. But the beach proved to be popular, attracting more than 215,000 people. I went there the other day. So peaceful, remarked a commenter on TikTok. Another joked, well, there are no sharks. One of the visitors was Mr. Alex Forwell, a 34-year-old business owner who lives west of Sydney and far from the coastal beaches for which the city is famous. After hearing about the opening of Pondi in December 2023, he and his wife, who both grew up going to beaches in Sydney, decided to venture to the new beach in Penrith. My wife really loves the beach ocean. So we went down to see what it was like. He told the Straits Times. We just jumped in the water for an hour and then went home. It is still water, fresh water, and there are no waves. It is like swimming at a lake. Mr. Forwell grew up living in Balmain, an inner city suburb, and would spend weekends in summer at the nearby beaches in the east. He said the Penrith Beach is a 45-minute drive from their home in the Blue Mountains, but the nearest coastal beach is a 2-hour drive away. He enjoyed his first venture to a Sydney inland beach, he said, but admitted that he preferred the real ocean beach. Pondy was nice for the day, but I don't know if we would make it a regular thing, he said. I think it is a great idea because it allows people who don't want to travel far to the beach to swim in real water in the summertime. The Penrith Beach closed for the winter, but is set to reopen in the coming summer, most likely from December to April. So here is another artist's impression of the proposed lake house to be built at Hornby, a new man-made beach in Penrith, a suburb in Sydney. The New South Wales government has provided 2.5 million Australian dollars to support maintenance and infrastructure for the beach for this summer and to expand its capacity, saying it provides much needed respite for residents in Western Sydney, where temperatures are hotter than along the coast. Data showed most of the visitors to Pondy came from Penrith and nearby suburbs. But there are hopes that Pondy could be just the first of many beaches that could be developed in riverways across Sydney. The Our Rivers report said that the beaches would be built on the Hawkesbury, Nepean, Georges, and Parramatta rivers, which stretch along much of western and northern Sydney. The region is home to 275 kilometers of riverways. The report said all Western Sydney residents should have access to waterways for swimming and recreation within 30 minutes of their home. Some of the beaches would include food and beverage outlets, bike paths, play areas, spots for markets or festivals, or access to walking trails and kayaking and boating facilities. The investment in revitalizing the waterways would be substantial, but would be offset by the public health benefits of promoting active outdoor lifestyles. Our aspiration is clear: to transform how Western Sydney engages with its rivers and waterways, the report said. Better connection to waterways is essential. Creating a network of accessible blue infrastructure will help mitigate the impacts of extreme heat, boost physical activity, and generate economic opportunities through recreation and tourism. Business Western Sydney Executive Director David Porcher, a former state minister, said developing river beaches would reshape the region's future. Western Sydney is already the hottest part of Sydney during summer. He said in a statement, "It is only going to get hotter. We should be looking at ways to increase water access and swim safety so our young families can enjoy some respite." The proposal has so far received strong public support, including the backing of local mayors. This is not surprising, given the appetite for swimming sports in Sydney, whose moderate climate is well suited to beach going. Dr. Caroline Ford, a historian of Sydney beaches, told Straits Times that Sydney has been synonymous with the beach since the 1920s and the 1930s. Noting that the city's beach culture is partly an accident of geography. The string of beautiful beaches that line the coast have been long have long been within the reach of day trippers, making a day at the beach an attractive summer option for so many Sydney residents, she said. Dr. Ford said Sydney also has a long tradition of swimming in riverways, a tradition that is set to continue as the city expands into the western suburbs. Swimming spots along our river system have been popular with Sydney residents, including Aboriginal people, as a place to play, eat, and spend time with friends and family for many centuries, she said. The need to widen access to public swimming infrastructure in Sydney was highlighted by a survey conducted by the North South Wales government in 2019, which asked residents about their preferred outdoor activities. The most popular activity was walking, hiking, or jogging, named by 85% of Sydneysiders, followed by 77% who said relaxing outdoors. 64% said having picnics or barbecues. Having picnics or barbecues. 53% said swimming in public waterways such as rivers and beaches. 49% said visiting playgrounds. 34% said walking the dog. 30% said viewing or creating art. And 27% named playing ball games. Swimming in waterways was preferred by just 43% of residents in Western Sydney. This was not surprising, given that residents there also reported having longer transport times to waterways and were more dependent on accessing them by cars. The car trip from Penrith to Bondi Beach takes 1 hour and 10 minutes and costs 19 Australian dollars each way in tolls. It can be an expensive day out. Business Western Sydney is pushing for the New South Wales Business Western Sydney is pushing for the New South Wales government to develop an urban rivers task force to work on opening access to waterways and developing new beaches. The government has committed to improving access to public swimming, including reopening Pondy in the coming summer. Western Sydney Lakes, a corporation that owns and operates a 2,000-hectare site in Western Sydney that includes the Penrith Beach, believes the site could be far more extensive and could include a pier, a boardwalk, and a two-story lake house or pavilion similar to the famous buildings that overlook well-known beaches in Sydney, such as Bondi, Coogee, Coogee, and Balmoral. It has also proposed including a tourist precinct with waterfront dining and luxury retail outlets, targeting visitors who will use Sydney's upcoming second international airport, Western Sydney International, which is due to open in Western Sydney at the end of 2026. Western Sydney Lakes head Jacqueline Vozzo told Straits Times that developing additional riverside beaches would transform the area. She said most residents are aware that there are local riverways, but do not currently view them as accessible for a swim or picnic. The waterways are not part of the psyche of a lot of residents, she said. For someone in Western Sydney, they need to get in the car and travel through tolls for an hour to get to a beach. It's a significant investment to have a swim. If you have it in your own backyard, it can become part of your lifestyle. Ms. Vozo said the lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic had divided the city and left many inland residents with limited access to beaches, further fueling the thirst for local access to natural swimming spots. The quintessential Australian lifestyle is access to the water, she said. The East has always had access to that water to cool themselves over summer. Western Sydney has not had that opportunity. Surely we can do better. So that is all for our morning news reading session. Thank you for joining us today. We do still have some afternoon teaching sessions lined up later today at 4 p.m. and another teaching session at 5:30 p.m. So please do join us later. We will have more